Out in the six, I'm a national treasure. That bad me gon' bad me forever. R.I.P. Kobe, but y'all brokey. That's probably why y'all be shacking together. Capo and Leader got habits together. Like couples vacation, they packing together. Like rushing to finish, then slap it together. The charges like COVID, they'll catch it together. They hate me so much, it's a sickening thing. They must have heard wrong on the call. I sent them a sack cause I wanted you shipped to the king. When you was a part of the team, we used to be planning our Mexico trip in the spring. We must have been dealing in spur of the moment. Cause why did we think you could get us a ring? They bragging about how you went home, the that ain't on. Crody, we threw him away.
What's going on, Oscar? I haven't had a shave in fucking a month, I guess.
You're on the road.
I'm on the, man, there's just a lot, a lot. We still out here campaigning.
Yeah.
For the future president of the Gambia, my boy Talib. Is it here? We got the Gambian flag.
Yes, sir.
I'm feeling somewhat militant.
Yeah.
Right?
It has that vibe.
It's like a militant.
It's a revolution.
Energy. But yes, sir.
Today's episode is all about reviewing business financials. So what is the first information you will be looking for in the financials of a business?
No heads up, no nothing. No time to prepare. No PDF before. Hey, Yusufa, you might want to just, scratch up on what you're going to say just straight up. How do you review the financials, sir? So look, first of all, there's generally speaking two types of businesses for sale. There are businesses that are listed for sale, i.e. on market. Those are the ones where the business owners have opted to sell the company. Typically, they would have recruited a sell-side broker who prepares an information memorandum, which is a 12-page document that highlights the key information about the business and circulates it across a pool of potential buyers, i.e. myself and others. Or you have off-market businesses. Those are companies that don't necessarily have an intention to sell. It hasn't necessarily crossed their mind. They certainly haven't engaged in a formal for-sale process. And these are two different categories of business for sale. Why? Because the level of preparedness that they have in the approach is very different. As you can imagine, the on-market businesses that are listed for sale typically have what's called a data room, which is just a place online, Dropbox or some other format. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry for
No, that's perfect. This is always helpful and welcome. That's perfect. What do we got here? Is that like a little cookie or something?
It's a homemade chocolate, actually.
Whoa. And that's just a place where they collate all of the information relevant to the transaction, right? The proposed transaction. So what does that include? That includes a information memorandum, which is 12 to 16 pages about the business, including financials. That can include financial forecasts for the company. That might include some financial statements for the business on a historical basis, as well as other information. Now, your question, Oscar, is what do I look for when I'm looking at the financials? Now, what you'll notice is I haven't just given you a number or a KPI or a sheet that I go for, because essentially you're looking at the entire business and the viability of the company. However, obviously, you want to focus in on the profit and loss statement, which shows the income and expenses of the business, as well as the balance sheet, which shows what the company owns and what the company owes. In other words, assets and liabilities. On the profit and loss statement, what I'm looking at is, honestly, I'm looking at the revenue side to see, does it even have scale? Is it a 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million revenue business? That sort of shows me the scale of the company first. Secondly, I'm looking at the trends associated with that revenue. Is it flat? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it squiggly? Because as I always say, accounting is the language of business and the numbers are trying to tell you a story. So if the revenue is going up consistently, what does that suggest? A business that's potentially thriving, that's doing well, that's increasing its sales. And on the other hand, if you have a business that's sliding revenue, then one could suggest that, that's catching a falling knife, a company that's in distress or in trouble, right? For example, our steel groups, if you looked at it as a consolidated group of what was 4 businesses, it's now only 2 businesses because we had 2 bankruptcies. And so what used to be a 40 million pound group is now a 29, 30 million pound group. And obviously that's sliding revenue. So one would then look at that and say, well, what happened here? And there's a story, which is we had 2 bankruptcies, right? So revenue and the revenue trend. I am then skipping straight down and looking at the earnings. I skip through the gross profit, I skip past all that stuff at first glance. and I want to see the profitability. And in profitability, similarly, I'm trying to see what are the trends, right? What are the numbers pointing towards? Does it make money? What is the percentage of profitability against the revenue? Is it an 8%, 10%, 15% margin? Now, on profitability, I think people get a bit confused, right? Because what are earnings? There's net earnings, which is the money that a business makes after paying all of its employees, all of its staff, the cost of its goods, all of its admin and running expenses, as well as if it has debt, all of its interest payments, if it has, plant and machinery and assets that need to be replenished as the years go by, it's made allocations for, the replenishing of those assets, as well as having paid its taxes to the tax man. That's what's called net earnings, net of all expenses and obligations. But what I'm looking at typically is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, also known as EBITDA. Because what that shows me is the profitability of the business based on how we would choose to run it as the proposed new owners. Because that's your opportunity to increase your costs, for example, and make less net earnings. Or maybe don't have the same rate of investments in the capital expenditure, thereby changing the depreciation schedule. So I'm looking at the EBITDA figure. And typically, as I mentioned, I'm also looking at the trends of the EBITDA. So that's P&L. On the balance sheet side, what am I looking at? I'm only concerned with, can I buy this business? And can I buy this business meaning, what are the tools, what are the levers that I can pull against to try and get leverage? Okay, what are my levers of debt and credit? As you may remember, there are basically only two forms of credit for LBOs. Okay, so either you can get a cash flow loan, which is an unsecured loan that a bank will give you, not secured by any assets, right? Unencumbered or unsecured, or you can have a asset-based loan, right? Meaning you have provided security to the lender. There's only two forms. Now, within the second form, which is the asset-based loan, there's basically two types of assets that you can use to get money against. One is called plant and machinery, which is the physical assets, right? So if you have a factory, this will be your equipment, your tools, your plant, your factory. And the other is your debtor book, which is the set of IOUs, right? So you would have delivered goods and services to customers, but you would have not yet collected your money, your payments. Those show up on the balance sheet as an asset because someone owes you that money, and that asset is typically referred as a debtor book. These are your debtors, your trade debtors. And the reason that you look at these two assets is because you can get leverage against them. With plant and machinery, you can typically get between 50 to 60% against the total value. So if there's £1 million worth of unencumbered plant and machinery, you can get £600,000 in leverage against that £1 million. And on the other hand, on the debtor book, if there's £1 million worth of debtors, you can typically get between 50% and 90% against the value of the debtors, depending on the sector you're in, the way in which you trade with your customers, and other things of that nature. When I'm looking at a business, and your question, Oscar, is what do I look at in the finances? I very quickly look at the P&L, try to understand what's the revenue, what are the trends, is it growing, is it falling, what is the top line, as well as does it make money? And on the balance sheet, I'm looking at what does it own, what does it owe, and what levers can I use to attract credit? That's the answer. And I do that while drinking a cup of coffee.
Who is it?
Oh, here we go. Hey, Alex, how's it going? I'm doing extremely well. This is Yusufa calling.
What's your name again, sorry?
It's Yusufa. You sent me an email with a few leads. One of them I was quite interested in. Aerospace and defense manufacturer. Can you see it?
Yeah, that would be more than fine.
Tell them that this is a client who is quite interested and would like a chance to sell himself. I don't believe in having pieces of paper sell me. Right. So look, I'm signed up to a few deal flow sources, right? You were asking me, how do I review the financials of a company? Before you even get there, first you need to find the company. And I've never bought a business in the US, but I lived in America for 4 years. And if I'm honest, my general interests don't lie in the US. That being said, something about this caught my attention. It said aerospace and defense. Now, that could be one of two things. That could be the wrong type of defense, i.e. weapons manufacturing, the nasty stuff. Would never get involved there. Generally speaking, I think defense is a sector that is becoming much more prominent given the day and age we live in. And I was just talking to Oscar and saying, look, if they make, for example, Kevlar vests, right, that protect people and save lives, then actually that's a very interesting opportunity, right? So there's sort of two categories of defense. There's the offensive side, i.e. weapons manufacturing, nasty stuff, would never get involved. But there's sort of the support services side, or what I would call the defensive services side, and that could be quite interesting actually. And there's a company in America called Entrepreneurial, run by a guy named Palmer Luckey. He's now a billionaire, and he's basically building modern defense technology using artificial intelligence. And obviously, he's building weapons and stuff, and they are killing people. So that's the nasty side. But I think it could be interesting to see whether I can get involved in the life-saving side of the defense technology manufacturing ecosystem. So all we need is this kind gentleman here to make a list of one and put me on the top of that list, and then can set up a meeting with the owners and introduce myself.
So what type of information do you think is mostly overlooked yet important to pay attention to?
Mostly overlooked yet important. It's easy to tackle both separately. I would say some things that can be overlooked. Customer concentration, meaning, let's say that it's a perfect business, makes money, growing, you've negotiated a good valuation, the seller's willing to stay on. Let's say it ticks literally every single box, but 70% of their revenue comes from one customer, or 40%, for example, comes from a single customer. That's too exposed, right? They're too exposed to that specific customer. And if that customer goes away, slows down, or falters in any way, the entire business comes at risk. I actually have a friend who watches this show, so I'll be careful what I say. But he bought a business that had 90% customer concentration, okay? The customer happened to be a municipality, okay? Copenhagen municipality. Copenhagen, obviously the capital city of Denmark, Denmark being an EU country. So you would think that that's a robust customer, and the business he bought had been servicing that customer for about 15 years. And I'll even go as far as saying the services that they were providing were sort of in the employment preparedness space, right? So essentially people were underemployed. This was a private company that upskilled the labor force and prepared them for employment, and they were invoicing the municipality. He bought the business, and within the first year, they lost that municipal contract. It literally went away. And so they went from having a thriving business that had been operating for about 20 years on these 5-year contract intervals, with a promise that the next interval would be granted. And then they bought the business, 90% concentration, and it went away. By the way, this is an experienced operator, an experienced investor. This is a sophisticated investor, and he's a kick-ass guy, and he's built many success stories. He's taken companies public, but even he made that mistake, right? Because he thought that a municipality and the nature of the customer would protect them. And one thing I'll tell you, man, the deal gods can be quite unkind. So if you leave yourself exposed, they'll bite you. Now, that was a mistake. That being said, your question was overlooked and important.
That was both.
That was both? You see, this is, I'm a natural at this. You know what I mean? 10 out of 10. Right?
Yeah.
Without trying. Shit, I surprise myself some damn times. Personally, what I look for is sustainability of earnings. Because the worst thing that you can do is buy a business and have it on a very short-term basis run into financial and economic challenges. By the way, I'm speaking from experience. So it's one thing for me to talk about my friend and his mistakes. Let's talk about my mistakes. You know, it's always easier to cast mud at the other guy. This is a mistake I've made time and time and time again. As a matter of fact, every business that I have bought has experienced some kind of economic pain and hardships somewhat shortly after doing the transaction. And I almost asked myself, like, you know, what's going on here? Is it that the sellers are hiding it prior to a sale? Is it that I'm just like super shit at putting a due diligence team together? What is it? And I think ultimately every business is at various stages of going bankrupt, even as they scale. I mean, I have a different friend, I won't mention his name. You know, he's built a company, a tech startup from scratch. Within 3 years, it's now valued at about $2 billion US. Very fast growing company. He's a massive success, huge inspiration to me and others in my network. Fucking love the guy. He's one of the killers in our inner circle, okay? This guy's crushing it. And I suspect that on the outside, he's crushing it. Not that he's ever said this to me, but I suspect that, you know, he probably loses sleep at night just like me, right? Worrying about whether or not it can all go away. Because now, he's got that $2 billion valuation, right? He's got those articles in Forbes and all of these other, publications, right? He's raised about 400 million US dollars of investor capital. The world expects him to succeed. And yet, he probably is also in various, stages of insolvency, because that's what it feels like building a business. It feels like failure, because by definition, you're pushing the boundaries. You're trying things that you may not have tried before. I mean, your 10th year in business is your first time having run that business for 10 years. So by definition, it's always new. The experience, even though it's familiar, is still new. And if you're ambitious, you keep pushing the boundaries and pushing the edges and trying to discover how far you can take it. So that experience does not go away. I mean, in many ways, I'm just as petrified today as I was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm surrounded by, the objective success that the world mirrors onto me and says, Yusufa, you are a success. But I can tell you that my experience is surrounded by failures and things falling apart and trying to just bubble gum it and keep it together whilst, again, trying to buy the next deal. I was saying to Oscar here before we came outside that we're at 19 million today on the road to 0 to 100 million. I can see outcomes where 19 crashes down to 0 again, or 19 becomes 90 within the next 7 months. Like, it's all possible. So, that's just what it is, man. Like, we're capitalist warriors out here swinging our sword and riding our horse, hoping to not fall off, and storming one more battle, one more fight, one more victory, one more episode of 0 to 100. Let's fucking go.
Yes, sir.